Welcome to episode 3 in our Faith Journey series. Today you're going to meet Missy Martens. Now she is spunky and witty and energetic and tons of fun to be around. I'd only met her one other time, so this was our second time meeting, but it was a joy to be in her presence and to get to know her a little better. Here is Missy Martens. So today I'm joined by Missy Martens, Time of Grace blogger extraordinary. I think that was supposed to be extraordinaire.
It's all right.
You're extraordinary.
Thank you.
Hi, Missy.
Good morning.
And nice to have you with us. So tell us where you live and what your life looks like these days.
Oh, it's all over the place. Well, we live in the Green Bay area.
Okay.
We own a brewery in downtown Green Bay that my husband and I both are very actively involved there quite often. We also homeschool, so our kids are there with us.
How many kids do you have?
We have 4 kids.
Ages?
16, 14, 12, and 10.
16. So 16 is a sophomore?
Yes.
Okay. Till 10 is 6th?
5th grade.
5th. Okay. You're homeschooling all of them. You are phenomenal.
Oh,
so
thanks.
You are homeschooling. Do you do that in the morning?
We haven't even quizzed them yet. Yeah, we do that. It's all over the map.
Okay.
Some of the stuff we do, try to have one home day a week and take that stuff that we need to do at home together all in that one day and get a whole bunch done in that one day. And then there's many things they're bringing into the brewery as well. They're bringing their math and their writing and whatever else and sitting next to me as I do payroll, or it just kind of depends, helping each other out. And some days our homeschool days are working in the kitchen.
You live on the fly. You do a lot of different flexibility.
It's all
scheduling.
over the map, yeah.
That's awesome.
But that's the beauty of homeschooling too. It can be anywhere, anytime. A lot of natural learning. It's definitely not as much school at home as people think.
Yeah. So your husband grew up in Puerto Rico. His parents were missionaries.
Correct.
Up until, was it high school?
They were still missionaries long beyond that, but he ended up coming up to Nebraska, and then to Manitowoc for high school, which is where we met.
Is that where you met?
We did, yeah.
So what's your husband's name?
John Martens.
Okay, and how long have you been married?
18 years this coming New Year's.
Nice. And do you speak Spanish?
I do not yet. The kids and I are still learning slowly.
Did it stick with him? I mean, he learned from a very young age.
He's very fluent.
Yeah.
So he just doesn't get to use it a ton anymore.
I was wondering.
But, yeah.
Okay. And then when did you start writing for Time of Grace? How long has that been now?
I think it's maybe been 4-ish years.
Okay. How'd that come about? A brewery owner, homeschooling mom. How did you end up doing this?
We moved to Green Bay to start this brewery.
Okay.
Just a crazy opportunity that came up, but we can get to that story a little later. But Pastor Mike actually was a college classmate of mine, and then our pastor in Madison for a while. And then when we moved to Twin Cities and they moved to Appleton, and then we ended up moving back to Green Bay and reconnecting with them a little bit. And he had known that I had written in the past just for various things and college and everywhere. And he said, you should write for Time of Grace. So he's really the one that suggested I do it. And I didn't quite have enough on the plate yet. So I said, sure.
Why not?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what about homeschooling? Is that something that you always thought you would do? Or is that something that's just come up as the need arose?
We have done that for 9 years.
Okay.
My husband was homeschooled growing up in Puerto Rico. So he had kind of always had that in the back of his head. But I wasn't fully on board right away, and then slowly started to like the idea a little bit more. Our oldest went to school for 2 years. We ended up pulling him out after 2nd grade and saying, we can do this ourselves. He was starting to just lose a little bit of his love for learning and reading, and I was getting kind of the worst of him in the morning and in the afternoon, and the siblings, and I just saw them kind of growing apart. It was odd. So we thought, in the end, I didn't think this was God's design for the family to be apart for so long of the day and to be really stressed out in the morning and in the evening.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? We can do this ourselves. And
I love that you embraced it, even though it might not have been your first course of action. I mean, you went the other route first, but
and we thought 1 year at a time, and now it's been 9 years, and we love it, and going through high school too. So
that's incredible. So tell us about the brewery experience. You alluded to that. How did that come about? How did What was that opportunity? And it wasn't something, a lifelong dream of yours?
Not at all. Not something we were seeking out at all. We were living in the Twin Cities. My husband was a mechanical engineer. I had been a teacher, and now I was homeschooling the kids and just doing some small writing projects on the side. He didn't love his job, but he liked engineering. He just didn't. He looks for the next adventure and the next, like, what's exciting, what's a challenge, what can I take on? I think moving around so much kind of made him that way a little bit. So, we've been married, like I said, 18 years, and we've moved 9 times and try to figure out what we're doing and what's the next thing. So when this opportunity came up, and my sister and brother-in-law own Copper Rock Coffee in Appleton, they saw this building, what's now Copper State, used to be Hinterland Brewing. They saw it as a potential coffee shop when it was first going on the market. But it was ideally being sold with all the brewing equipment still and all the restaurant stuff. And they said, we can't do that alone. So that's when they called us. And Bill said, John, you should be a brewmaster. And we're like, yeah, that sounds like something we could do. He had brewed, so he actually bought the building before he brewed a single batch of beer.
Oh my. That's a steep learning curve.
Yeah, for sure. It was drinking from a fire hose for a while. Yeah. So when we moved in 2016, the cool part with Hinterland that we worked out was that we were super flexible with their move-out date. We had bought the building. They were renting it back from us. And they gave John an apprenticeship, basically, with their brewers on their equipment. So he learned pretty much by doing, making their beer and their equipment till they moved out and we took over. Also had 0 restaurant experience, which is maybe a plus because you have to be a bit naive to get into that world. And we've learned a ton over the last 5 years. The little pandemic thrown in there for good measure. But yeah, so they every year people are like, yeah, first year is the hardest. First 2 years are the hardest. First 3 years are the hardest. So
pandemic years are definitely the hardest.
So now it's been 5 years. So it's should be smooth sailing from here, right?
Yeah, that doesn't happen in the restaurant business, does it? I don't know anything about brewing companies, so I wouldn't know anything about that. But restaurants.
It's been fascinating. It's a whole different animal. It's a lot of personnel stuff, a lot of really interesting things we've just learned as far as leadership and culture and dealing with customers, dealing with staff. It's a very interesting ministry for sure.
So did you ever think the brewery might not make it?
Going into it, that was just not even an option in our heads. This was just, all right, this is what we're trying next. Let's do it. Here, we got the right skill sets. We got knowledge. We've got
what is the skill set other than working really, really hard and being naive about failing?
It's a goodly amount of just it's hard work. It's John's big on like he's just the next adventure. He's super hands on. He just learns the next thing, figures it out. Brewing is a process. It's a chemical. He gets the science. He loves spreadsheets so much. This is all a big, like, it's a repeatable thing. He can totally figure all that stuff out. Yeah. And once he figures that out, then he likes to figure out what the next challenge is. And now what's the next challenge. So the brewing and the business itself is a really fun adventure for him because it's all sorts of different challenges that you just keep mastering and trying to, like, what's the next thing? We can keep growing from here. Yeah. And then we can use it as another jumping board for all sorts of different other ideas because now we have all these people we know and everything else. But there was definitely a couple times throughout the 5 years during, in the process where we went, oh, this is real close to not making it. And we got to put a bunch more cash in and we got to do this. And how are we doing this? And, but really in our heads, like it was even, I think even in the back of our heads, it was like, well, if this whole thing goes downhill, we're smart people. We're fine. We can figure this out. We can figure out the next thing. Like it was never if this fails, we're doomed. It was just,
I love that.
Let's just do this next thing. Let's try it. Let's figure this out. We're smart people. We know how to work hard. We'll figure it out at some point. So, and we've lived on, when John went back to school for engineering, and we had one kid when he started back at Madison, and then 3 by the time he graduated and didn't have a job. He graduated right in 2008 in the depression, in the recession era of like, now he can't find a job. And I think we lived on like $13,000 one year and went, look how we just made it. I don't know. God is good. So I think with that mindset too, you go into some like, yes, there's risk involved in starting a business, but we know how to live on practically nothing. We'll be just fine.
And you're not afraid of moving, clearly.
Right.
So if it doesn't work out, you can move somewhere else and do something else. Like there will be another adventure.
Yeah, and we don't do anything halfway. We just
jump in.
Go
as hard as you can.
Let's try it. Let's work. And so John has the whole process part. He's got the brewing part. He's got the financial stuff. Like that's his skill set, and I get to be the culture and the social media and the words and all our voice of our brewery. Mm-hmm. And so we have very different skill sets that have lent itself really well to success. So
clearly,
so far,
now,
so
I know
good.
It's not fair to ask this, but I'm going to ask it anyway because I don't care if it's fair or not. But do you see yourself staying in this? I mean, you said you're very open to adventure. And do you see yourself in the same place 5 years down the road? Or
that's a good question. We talk about that a lot.
Do you? That's what I wonder.
Yep. We talk about what would be the next thing because there are days when he's like, kind of bored with brewing.
Yeah.
But now he's, now we got a sales guy and we're expanding the distribution market. And there's plenty in it to keep him pretty interested.
Yeah.
And like I said, then we use the brewery for some other adventures right now. Like he's getting involved with some investment groups and other new business startups and helping with that kind of thing. So I don't know, there might still be enough that just keeps us interested and keeps us here. Mm-hmm. And this is the first time we've had more roots and our kids have good friendships and we have,
that's huge.
They're loving where we are. And so it might be something we do until the kids are out of the house. But I don't know. We've talked about just getting rid of everything and living in a van and traveling the world too. So I don't know. We'll see.
That's a very popular thing to do right now. Then you start a blog and then
I got the writing part. I could do that and John could fix things on the way. I don't know.
That's exciting.
Figure out what we want to do.
It is hard. I will say the age of your children, 16, that's a hard age to start digging up their roots and starting over again because they start getting attached to those friends. And
for sure.
Once you get a girlfriend or a boyfriend, you're all done.
Yeah, so far so good on that one.
Major rebellion if you even think you're
going to go anywhere. My oldest said he won't date till he's 27. So
perfect.
So yeah, we're all right on that one.
Do you have that on camera?
I do. Yeah.
Okay, good.
But yeah, we'll see. So it might be something we do until
show that at his wedding when he's 22 years old. That would be great.
Do that.
Yeah. So COVID meant shut down for a lot of things. I know a lot of businesses in restaurants in Minnesota, where I'm from, really suffered. How did you guys manage to get through?
Yeah, it was really actually on the other side of it. It turned out to be just fine. When we first were faced with we got to be closed for what you thought was 2 weeks and turned into 2 months for sure. Like we were not able to do any indoor dining for 2 months.
Yep.
And that's our bread and butter. We are a place to gather. That's our whole mission statement is connecting people and creating experiences. That's part of what we do is bring people in. So we, it was not fun to be closed for 2 months for sure. John and I were still there. We were still able to do coffee to go, beer to go, food to go. So we were at the brewery pretty much every day during COVID and our kids were there. They were sprawled out on all the tables doing games and puzzles and stuff. But we just had really faithful customers who ordered from us multiple times a week. It was humbling to see the support of the community. Like, we want you guys to survive. We realized what you guys are to downtown Green Bay. We want you to make it. So we had a lot of really faithful people ordering a lot through that whole time. And then immediately after we opened back up, and it was about May of that year, it was nice weather, and we have the outdoor beer garden patio, and we were busy right away.
Awesome.
So that was really neat to see that us coming back. It was, and during all of COVID, like I said, I'm the creative one and the voice and the whatever of our whole brewery. So we stayed in front of people in really fun ways on social media. I tried to start this whole hashtag Toast Positive movement where, this one's going after this, tag your friends, do this whole big toast media type thing on Instagram and Facebook. We did a few parody songs and videos and stuff that we released during that time. Like I said, just tried to stay in front of people and tried to keep our mission as far as connecting people, even though it was not able to be in person. So we had our homemade pizzas that we make at the brewery. We make wood-fired pizzas. We make our own dough. We make our own sauce, all that stuff. So we included all that into like a little stuff that you could pick up and take home and make pizzas with your kids at home.
Wow.
So we did a lot of like just creative, like what can we figure out, and stayed in front of people, and it paid off. I think it was something, like I said, when we came back open, it was pretty immediately busy.
So one of the big things that I'm sensing with your children, correct me if I'm wrong, but you said that they were all over the brewery doing puzzles and reading. You don't give them much time with screens, do you?
Now that, now I've got a 16-year-old and he's getting his very first phone this year. Okay. So yeah, it's not like I think you got to be really careful to not totally say no screens, because then those going to be just crazy, whatever, right. There's a good balance for sure. The older boys do have their own computer that they do some homework on, but then they also, of course, are constantly looking up sports. Yep. And et cetera. But it's not like there's no screens in our house. Yep. But it's a deliberate. It's definitely more. Yeah. They all love reading. They all love strategy board games. So that's been deliberate. Like the TV's not on at our house at normally. Like we have no Netflix, we have no Hulu, we have no I don't even know how people have time for these things. Actually, John and I are like, if it's like, did you watch that show? Like, never seen it. I don't know what you're talking about. Like,
and when I do
when do people have time to watch shows?
Not
we'll watch a Packer
owns
game on Sundays.
Their own business,
yeah, but it's limited in that way. But yeah, the boys are real into sports. They've got fantasy football. They've got their, so there's some of that going on, but for the most part, they're not constantly looking down, and neither are we. We try to set our own big time limits on that, because I've read a lot of books on that and stuff too. So on how that rewires your brain. And
absolutely. What do you do to keep your faith strong?
Well, there's definitely personal and like my own stuff, along with John and I usually do devotions together, and with the kids we'd either pick a book of the Bible, pick a book that's been written about something like that, and go through that together. So there's that. I think that actually writing for Time of Grace is super helpful for me, because then usually I dive in a lot deeper on a certain topic, which is more helpful to, like, because sometimes you can just quick, like, I just got to get my Bible reading in for the day, and it's really quick. But to write about it, I got to do a little more research. And
yes, you do.
And that's been actually really good for me to continue.
So do you have any good either couples devotion books or family devotion books that you guys have used?
Now the kids are a little older. We used to do like we loved the Jesus Storybook Bible. I don't know if you've by Sally Lloyd-Jones. That was one of our favorites. But we love just the Bible. Yeah. And we also like, now we've been doing some books by Walter Wangerin. We like him now that the kids are a little older. Or we do different ones by Frank Turek, or there's other bloggers and other speakers and stuff that we like to listen to now with the kids as they're a bit older, and get into more of the apologetics and defending your faith and that kind of thing right now.
We pretty much for our family stuck to the Bible too, for our family devotions. But my husband and I have done mornings and evenings by Spurgeon a couple times through, just make you think things through a little differently and get a different viewpoint. But yeah, good stuff. So what have been some of the things that have kind of threatened your faith, or that you've really had to work through?
I would say, like, I've never been close to being like, I'm done, I'm out of this faith type thing. But not that there's been, like this last 5 years have been a joy with the brewery, but also very much a struggle with getting the business off the ground, going through ownership changes, and staffing stuff constantly, of course. Yeah. Where you go, Lord, why aren't you blessing the fact that we'd like to spend more time outside of this brewery with our family, et cetera. So you start to question some of that once in a while. I've also been dealing with Lyme disease for 9 years, and joint pain constant and that kind of stuff. So there's been a little bit of that where you go, okay, Lord, why aren't you taking that away? I don't know why. I can't do a lot of things I used to do. I can't be quite as active with my family as I'd like to be. Yep. But yeah, things like that are not threats to my faith, I wouldn't say, but just stuff that I think bring you closer to God and seeking wisdom and seeking his answer and knowing that there's so much more beyond this world, which is super comforting.
Yeah.
So.
Kind of a hardship or a thorn. A little bit of a thorn in your side. Not that you're not going to give up your faith, like you said,
Right.
but just makes you depend on God just a little bit more. Is there any part of your life that you would do over if you could?
That's a tough one because as much as you'd like to think we could make our own choices, I think this is obviously what God has already designed for us, and I wouldn't pretend to go back and say, I think if I would have done that, then this,
Yeah.
Maybe the only thing I would say is I've always wanted to be a better journaler and record stuff, record things my kids have said that I could then write a book out of or whatever, or, record more of when they were little. I did a terrible job of that. I've got the typical lots of pictures of my firstborn.
Yeah.
Not quite as many as the second, third, fourth. And same, videos. We've got a few videos and I'm like, oh, why didn't I take more? Or, and recording this stuff about the brewery too. I think in the same way, if I would have written down everything as it happened, that'd be kind of neat, I think, for my faith too. Write down your prayer stuff. So I've always kind of wanted to do that better and have still never gotten better at that. Maybe that.
There's still time. I got into journaling, prayer journaling, Bible journaling in 2020 for the first time. I just needed to, my Bible studies kind of quit meeting. Right. We quit doing everything. And so I started just taking a couple of verses of the Bible at a time. And instead of just reading them, praying them, meditating on them, and putting them down. And it's really brought the Bible to life in a whole different way but I just started. I'm older than you. Right. So there's still time. Don't worry. Good. So what are some of your greatest joys?
Watching the kids grow and learn. That's the part I love about homeschooling is just learning right along with them and then watching them each develop their unique, 4 different kids, very, very different, same parents, same environment, super differences. It's so fun to watch them become who they're meant to be and their strengths and everything and guide that. I love that. A lot of joys with the brewery, the fact that, before when John had his normal 9-to-5 type of engineering job, that was his world. And then I had the kids in the morning and he didn't want to talk about work afterwards. And I was done with parenting for, it was we were a little more, it was almost separate lives at that point. And the part about the brewery has been really fun. It's been our whole family is on the same page, working together for this very same goal. I love working with John. That's been really fun. I love the customers that the regulars that we've got now. It's been really fun to be a part and grow some roots in downtown Green Bay and be a part of the community and get to know people and be that, like I said, the ministry to our customers and to our staff and to those are some everyday joys that the Lord gives us for sure.
Yeah, that sounds great. And you've been part of the core for a while, huh?
Yes. Yeah.
And you guys are not just sideline or bystanders. You guys are kind of active here too.
Yeah, we love that. There's a lot of opportunities for service here, which is also we love the kids too. I get to sing for the core here. My second might start singing a little bit too. A couple of my other kids are helping with AV and sound stuff, or core kids, or ushering. Huge. Yeah, it's been fun to be a part of that too, and show the kids this is part of our life. This is our brewery's closed on Sundays for a reason. Yep, and we love that, and that's our day to be here and to be with our church family and to relax and have a Sabbath, much needed.
Yeah. Have you always sang?
Yeah, since, my whole family was singers.
Musically inclined. Nice.
Yeah. So John and I actually got married in Fiddler on the Roof in high school. So he sings
You were
too.
both?
Yeah. He was Perchik, I was Huddle.
So does he sing in front of...
He doesn't sing worship? At the core.
No,
but,
he doesn't.
He used to sing in a barbershop quartet.
Really?
Yeah. So, but it's just been a while since he's done that, and he doesn't have quite as much time. Not that I have a ton of time, but he has even less time than I do right now. So
yeah. Oh, that's neat. So where do you get your ideas for what you write your blogs about?
All over. Some of them come from my personal Bible study. That's another good thing because I'm like, I got to be in it.
Mm-hmm.
So I can pull out like, oh, I really like that passage. I'm going to try to do a whole thing on that passage.
Yep.
Some is just everyday life with kids and with staff and with customers. And some is based on, if they've got certain topics for the week, then I'll dive into something there. And kind of all over.
Mm-hmm. So we asked you to bring one of your favorite blogs. Can you tell us what was going on, like behind the scenes for this blog that you picked?
That was really hard, by the way. That was kind of fun to go back and read a bunch. I picked one. I don't actually remember if there was any specific instance, but except that my kids started to do impressions of me, and that's maybe where this one comes from. You'll see. and say the words apparently that I said all at the same time to them. So then I picked the one that I entitled The 2 Most Important Things I Say to My Kids. But really all these are what you could say to anyone. It's not just kids. It's really to all children of God that need to hear both of these things. That's kind of where that idea came from.
Awesome. Well, we'd love for you to read it to us.
All right. So 2 most important things I say to my kids. If you were to ask my kids to do an impression of me, they would probably pronounce in a funny voice, because that's apparently how I talk, I will laugh in your face. This is admittedly a phrase I do say a lot. It's usually prefaced by a statement like, this is the food I put in front of you, and if you don't eat it and you tell me you're hungry in an hour, I will laugh in your face. Or perhaps, go to the bathroom now before we leave, because a half an hour down the road, if you ask us to stop for you, I will laugh in your face. You see, it's just good parenting. It's become a silly way to show consequences for actions, and my kids think it's hilarious when I say it to their siblings. However, that phrase is not the only one I hope I remember, nor would I rank it among the most important. After almost 13 years of parenting, that was a few years ago, I think I've narrowed down the 2 most important things I say to my kids. It's not about you. As a general rule, people are pretty self-centered, and we often need to hear this. As a new parent of small human beings, when my kids would whine at a request from me and say, I don't want to, my sarcastic nature used to respond with, well, I don't care. That wasn't effective, and it also wasn't true. I do care. In fact, I care so much that I need to fulfill the role God gave me to guide and raise them, to think of others, and to honor and respect those in authority. Now, when they complain or rebel, I say, it's not about what you want. Often followed by, right now, it's about listening and obeying. This is an attempt to show that life does not revolve around them, and this message is not just a message for kids. Adults are just as self-centered, and God often has to remind us of our role as His children, and that we would do well to listen to Him. Job didn't do a lot of whining and complaining. He's generally remembered as an upright and faithful man in the face of much suffering. But in Job 10:1, we hear him crack a bit and say, I loathe my very life. Therefore I will give free rein to my complaint and speak out in the bitterness of my soul. Now, my children never articulate their complaints quite as well as Job, but the sentiment is the same, and God answered Job the way I now answer my children. It's not about you. God rebuked Job, saying, Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Tell me if you understand. Have you ever given orders to the morning or shown the dawn its place? In fact, every verse of chapters 38 and 39 in the book of Job are God very eloquently saying, it's not about you. But God does not stop there, and neither should we as parents. So here comes the second, even more important thing I say to my kids, and it really relates to the first one more than we might think. You are a redeemed and loved child of God. Some days are hard. There are bullies at school, sibling rivalries, health issues, broken families. Some kids carry burdens way bigger than their little backs or hearts should be carrying. Kids feel anxious, guilty, and worried, just like adults. There are times when my kids don't need to hear, it's not about you, or I will laugh in your face. But instead need me to turn their grubby, tear-streaked faces to me, look them in the eye, and reassure them that they are redeemed and loved children of God. When they're crushed by life and the brokenness of this world, then it's time to lift them back up and remind them who they are in Christ Jesus. We all need that reminder every day. We are redeemed and loved. Passive voice. We did nothing, we get everything. For it is by grace you have been saved through faith, and this not from yourselves, it is the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast. Ephesians 2:8-9. The author Philip Yancey has a few things to say about being redeemed and loved children of God in his book, What's So Amazing About Grace? Grace means there's nothing we can do to make God love us more, and grace means there's nothing we can do to make God love us less. Grace teaches us that God loves us because of who God is, not because of who we are. In our quiet moments of doubt and guilt and worry, God turns our tear-streaked faces to himself, looks us in the eye, and reminds us, it's not about you. I did it all. You are a redeemed and loved child of mine.
I love your writing.
Oh, thank you.
I do. It's a great reminder. Just so often you have just little simple ways of reminding us of what's important. And I love the fact that you take parenting so you know that it's important. You put it in a high priority in your life, and that's a good reminder for all of us that it's a calling, to be a parent, and you're doing a good job of doing it. I appreciate that very much, and I hope other people listening are reminded, you can't do it perfectly. None of us will. But it's good to put the effort in. Do what you can.
There are days when I'm like, I am killing it on the brewing front, on the kid front, and everything else. And then the next day I'm like, oh, I'm a terrible mother and owner. And
that's pretty normal.
There's all that involved, but one day at a time.
That's what we do. Great meeting you again. And I'm sure that people are going to like to hear the person behind the blogs that they've been reading. So thanks for being here today.
Indeed. Thanks for having me.